So our speaker for today is Kaitlyn, and she is the Customer Success Manager with Permanent.org. She is a trained digital archivist who is interested in making digital preservation accessible to everyone. And I will go ahead and turn it over to her and we'll get started.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Permanent.org and how you can preserve your digital legacy of your family on Permanent.org. So thank you again for inviting me, and I'm really excited to share Permanent and the Permanent Legacy Foundation with you all today. Just a quick agenda of kind of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are at the Permanent Legacy Foundation. And then I'm going to talk about how you can preserve your family history on permanent.org, go over a couple of features and some different aspects of permanent.org that might be helpful to you as a family historian or a genealogist. And then we're going to dive into permanent.org itself. And I'm going to give you a tour of one of the public archives that one of our members has created so that you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like to create an archive on Permanent. And then we're actually going to go over the steps to get started on permanent.org, creating an account, creating an archive, and then go over kind of what you can do after this webinar to get started. I work at the Permanent Legacy Foundation. I am the member success manager, and that means that it's my job basically to make sure that our members or anybody interested in joining permanent.org is able to complete their goals to preserve their family's legacy on permanent.org. So I'm really here to make sure that, if you have any questions about the platform or about who we are at the Permanent Legacy Foundation, or even if you run into any trouble as you're getting started, that I'm here to kind of help and provide some personalized instruction and help for you as you get started. So the Permanent Legacy Foundation, we are a nonprofit organization, and we have created and maintained a platform called permanent.org. And basically what permanent.org is a digital preservation cloud storage platform that's really aimed more at individuals, small organizations, and community groups. And on permanent.org, you can create archives that represent your legacy. And we like to kind of define legacy as a very broad thing of whatever you want to pass down to the next generation. So that could be, your personal memories from vacations and your life's work and things like that. It could be your family's history and the genealogical research that you've done. It could be, maybe you've done a lot of work in your community that you want to ensure the next generation of people in your community can learn from and remember that history. And so we want to provide a space for you to be able to preserve that material and pass it on to the next generation. And so our mission at permanent.org is to preserve and provide perpetual access to the digital legacy of all people for the historical and educational benefit of future generations. And we really lean into that all people because historically, as you probably are familiar as family historians and genealogists, that it can be really hard sometimes to track down your ancestors' records and materials and learn about them. And so we want to make sure that people who are doing this work in the future, now that we've moved to a lot of digital things, that those people are still able to learn about their ancestors. And so that work really needs to happen right now. If you've ever had a situation where you've had a hard drive die on your computer and lost all of your material or something like that, you probably are well aware that digital material can be really challenging to preserve and pass down even, 5, 10, 15 years. And so we want to make sure that digital preservation is accessible to average individual people so that you can pass down that material that you want to pass down to the next generation. And so at permanent.org, we believe that all people leave a legacy that deserves to be preserved and that individuals' stories can change the way we see the world. And so we really are aimed at small organizations, community groups, and individuals because we know that it's not always easy or feasible to make sure that your material is passed down to like an archive or a library or somewhere that houses those kinds of records traditionally. History in general has been captured and written by people who had the means to make sure that their names are in the history book. But there's a lot of also kind of serendipitous findings that we've had throughout the years of records and materials that, maybe weren't intended to be passed down to the next generation, but were. One really good example of that I can think of is Anne Frank's diary, that, being able to read her diary is really can change the way that you see the Holocaust and things like that. And so we want to make sure that individual stories now are really able to be preserved in the future. So that's a little bit about who we are at the Permanent Legacy Foundation. Now I'm going to switch and talk a little bit more about our platform, permanent.org, and how you can use it to preserve your family's history. I mentioned earlier, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail now. On permanent.org, you create what we call archives that capture whatever your legacy that you want to pass down. So that could be your family history, could be your own memories, it could be community records and things like that. And so on permanent.org, you can create as many archives as you want that really capture whatever it is, that legacy that you want to pass down. So if you have multiple parts of your family that you're researching, or a particular individual that you want to highlight in an archive, you can create as many archives as you'd like in order to do that. And so an archive is really a collection of material that encapsulates the person or the group or the family that you have created the archive for. So you can put things like photos, videos, basically whatever you want into your archive to really tell the story of that person or that family that you are preserving the material of. And so permanent.org is first and foremost a digital preservation platform. And so I think one of the things that differs, we are a cloud-based platform, but I think one of the things that differs from using like Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that is that we are first and foremost a preservation platform. And so we like to say that if it's made of bits, you can upload it and preserve it on permanent. And so that means that, you know, if you have a family tree file, like a JCOM file or something like that, you can preserve that on permanent. It can be basically whatever file type that you want. We do have certain file types that you can upload and view on permanent. And basically what we're doing in the background as part of us being a digital preservation platform is we're taking your file and we're transforming it into a different file format that we think will be accessible in the future. Our goal is to make sure that if you upload a PDF today, that in 50 years, you're still able to access that material, whatever is written in that PDF as it was. And so though PDF is a pretty common file format right now, it might not always be. And so we migrate things from different file formats to things like PDF or JPEG to make sure that in the future, if any of those file types become obsolete or aren't able to be opened, that we can migrate them to whatever the newest version of a PDF or a JPEG is to make sure that we can still open that in the future. And so you can upload pretty much any file type that you want to permanent. We'll do the hard work of making sure it's preserved. And there are certain file types that we accept to be able to view on permanent. And so that's what this chart is showing. And so I think another thing that makes us a little bit unique in this space is our cost model. So instead of a lot of other cloud storage providers have subscriptions or something like that, we actually have a one-time storage fee endowment model that's very similar to how like a library or an archive or a museum might work. So instead of paying a subscription to make sure that your material is preserved, on permanent.org, you pay a one-time storage fee of $10 per gigabyte. And so that one-time fee goes into our endowment along with any other donations we get as a nonprofit. And that endowment covers the cost of storage and maintenance of your files over time. So you don't have to worry about, like, in the future, if you aren't able to keep up with a subscription, or, after you've passed, your family doesn't have to worry about a subscription on permanent.org. You pay that one-time storage fee and your files will be preserved indefinitely. So I think another feature of permanent.org that's really helpful for family genealogists is being able to collaborate with others. So when you create an archive on permanent.org, there are lots of different ways that you can collaborate. And the best part is that you really have control over how others can collaborate with you. So if you are trying to capture the story of your ancestors who immigrated to a new place, and that other cousins or family members have material that kind of helps to tell that story, you can actually work together on permanent.org to preserve that material and upload and describe that material to make sure that you really capture the whole story. So you can add people as archive members and they're able to see your whole archive, and you have control over what they can do in your archive too. So you can set their role as being a viewer where they can only view material, or you can actually add roles on top of that to allow them to upload and edit metadata and things like that to make sure that really your story is told by all of the people who have different parts of that story, and you can collaborate together. Another thing that might be interesting for y'all as genealogists is we have an integration with Family Search that allows you to import different people who are on your family tree as archives and be able to import their memories as well that are associated in the Family Search tree onto Permanent so that you can preserve that material for the long term. So I just wanted to mention that as another feature that might be interesting, and I'd be happy to talk more about it if anybody has any questions. One of the last features that I kind of want to go over before we jump into looking at permanent.org itself is our legacy planning feature. We know that, the research that our members are doing about their family history is really important to them, and they want to make sure that the next generation is able to, access that material when they're ready and learn from it. And so we created a way for people to pass their archive essentially down to the next generation through legacy planning. And so what that means is that once you have passed or you are no longer able to take care of your archive, a plan gets set into motion that you created to allow somebody else to take over your archive. So you don't have to worry about writing down a password or something to leave behind or something like that. We have a built-in system that allows you to designate a person to be kind of the caretaker of your archive after you've passed, enact whatever wishes that may be, whether it's publishing your archive or, maybe adding to it or adding new family members as they come along. And so if you're interested in getting started on Permanent, I just wanted to mention that we are a nonprofit organization, so getting started is free. Creating an account on permanent.org is always going to be a free thing. So whether that be you starting your archive on Permanent, or whether that be, a family member or friend that you want to collaborate with, they can make a free account to get started and view your materials on Permanent. We also provide 1 gigabyte of storage for free so that you can get started kind of exploring the platform and seeing if Permanent's going to be a good fit for you to preserve your material. And as I mentioned before, you can also create as many archives as you like that really capture your family's history. So you're not limited to like 1 or 2 archives. You can create as many as you'd like to make sure that all the stories that you want to capture are preserved. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to move to permanent.org itself. And I'm going to show you what one of our members has created, a public archive that they've created, to show you a little bit about like what Permanent looks like, what our members have created, and kind of the end goal of what you're looking to create on Permanent. So I'm here at permanent.org/gallery, which is our Permanent public gallery. So when you share or when you create an archive on Permanent, we like to say that Permanent is first and foremost private, but you can publish things to the internet if you want to. And so if you've published something to your public archive, that's available for anybody on the internet to view. And you can find them in the Permanent public gallery. So if we scroll down here, we actually have a number of featured archives that other members of permanent.org have created. And these can be a great way to kind of get to know Permanent and maybe even get some ideas to use on your own archive. But I'm going to scroll to the bottom today, and we're going to look at the Chazzy Martin archive. And I'm going to let that load here, but this is kind of what a public archive looks like. You've got, it's similar to like some social media. You've got some profile pictures and banners to kind of introduce your archive to people. And one of the first things that you can see here is the View Public Profile button. So I'm actually going to click that. This is a space where you can kind of describe your archive. And so this person wants to share old and new family photos with their cousins.
Kaitlyn,
Yes.
sorry, would it be possible to make the screen a little bit bigger?
Yes.
The tab. Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. No, absolutely. Let me know if there's any other things that I can do to make it easier for people to see. So this is kind of what a public profile looks like. This person hasn't filled in any milestones, but the milestone section allows you to kind of tell the history of the person or the family that you are capturing in this archive. So you can do things like birth dates and the day that people got married or the day that somebody emigrated to a new place. And there's also some information on the right side where you can put contact information, websites, or anything that you'd like to share publicly. But I'm actually going to go back to this person's public archive, and I'm going to click into the folder that they've created here. While this is loading, basically, as I said before, a public archive is where you can put any of the material that you have want to publish to the internet, but you don't have to publish everything that you have in your archive. And so I know personally, I use Permanent for my family's materials, and there are some older materials that I do like to publish to my public archive. But there are also some family memories that are more recent that I keep privately on Permanent. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a second. So you definitely don't have to publish everything, but it is a nice way to make sure that anybody who wants to access it can access it, because they don't have to log into Permanent in order to be able to see it. So this is a folder in this person's archive, and you can see that you've got a kind of a gallery, collection of photos that they have uploaded to their public archive. So I'm going to click into one of them here. And once you click into it, you can see that you can see the full-size photo or document. If it's PDF, you'll be able to see that and read it. If it's PowerPoint presentation, you'll be able to see it. There's lots of different file formats that we can view publicly here in the public archive. But over here on the right side is where you can see that there's some metadata. And so we have the title of the file that this person uploaded, and then a brief description about what the photo is. There's a date, and then you can see that there's some tags. And so this is all metadata that you can add to each file that you have in your Permanent archive to make sure that that story is really captured. We at Permanent find metadata to be really important because otherwise you've just got, a collection of photos that, in the future, people might not know who the people are in the photo or what was happening in this photo. But when you add metadata like tags and descriptions, you can ensure that, those names live on to the next generation and the stories behind the photos can live on too. So that's basically what a public archive looks like. And so now I'm going to kind of take you through the step to get started on Permanent from the very beginning. So I'm going to come back here to my presentation real fast to show you a couple of things that you'll have to do to get started. And then we'll go back to permanent.org and I'll show you an example archive that I have and give you a little bit of a tour of what that looks like as well. First step would be to, if you want to get started on permanent.org, would be to go to permanent.org, and there's a place where you can click the sign up button. You fill in your basic information to sign up. And then there's a couple of steps that you do to get started. So the first most important thing, I think, is to create your first archive. And so there's going to be a couple of questions that kind of help you narrow down what type of archive you're creating. First question is about what you want to capture and preserve in your archive. So this can be things like maybe it's about an individual, or maybe it's about a family or a community organization. And so you'll pick that content type there. And then the next question is to name your archive. And so people generally name their archive after a family or the individual person that they're trying to capture. And then there will be a couple of other questions after you've created your archive that kind of help you to determine what your goal is to preserve materials on Permanent. This helps you kind of start to scope out the project that you're working on. And it also helps us to better understand what your goals are on Permanent so that we can provide you with information that's going to help you get started. So you'll see a couple of questions there. And then I'm actually going to switch back over to permanent.org. And when you finish kind of all the onboarding questions, you'll land in an archive that looks pretty similar to this. We're going to look at space photos today. In your archive, you probably won't see anything listed yet because you haven't uploaded anything to your archive yet. but it'll look pretty similar to this. And so I want to kind of point out a couple of things to kind of orient you to where you are in your archive. Up in the top right corner, you'll see your email address. And this is where you can find any information and settings and things like that that are about your account itself. So if we click this drop-down menu here, you'll see how much storage you have available. You can add storage. You can edit things in your account. You can create and manage your archives and invite other people to Permanent, and then you can log out. And so over here on this right side menu, this is everything that has to do with your account itself. Over here on the left side is where you can see things about the archive that you're currently in. So you can see from the title here that I'm in the Astronomy Photo of the Day archive. You can also see that I have an access role. Your access role will probably be owner if you created the archive. But if somebody has invited you to Permanent, you might have another access role. And so everything over here has to deal with your archive that you're currently in. The most important thing to point out is the different workspaces we have here below. And what a workspace is it's basically a dedicated, it's kind of like a drive or a folder on your computer where you can upload material to your archive. And each of these workspaces has a different role in your archive. So you first land in your private files workspace. And what this means is that anything you upload to this part of your archive is going to stay private to you and anybody who has access to your archive. So it's not public to the internet. You have complete control over who has access to this material. On the other side, if you click into the public files workspace, this is a place that you can upload material that you do want to share publicly with the internet. Anything that you upload to your public files workspace is going to be added to your public archive like we saw earlier today. And that's available for anybody to look at without a permanent login. People can only see things in your private files workspace if you've given them permission and added them to your archive, which means that they do need a permanent.org login to be able to view that material. So in this way, we have, kind of a spectrum of different ways that you can share with people, depending on whether you want them to log in or whether you want them to just be able to view that material. And so I said that the workspaces are kind of like a drive or a folder on your computer, and they act pretty similarly to how you might use Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. Up here in the top right corner, you have an upload button, and you can start uploading material to your permanent archive using that upload button, or you can actually drag and drop materials from your computer into your workspace, and that will start an upload. You can also click this new folder button and start kind of organizing materials into folders that you've uploaded, kind of like you would on your computer or on another cloud storage provider's website. So you can create as many folders as you want to kind of organize the material in a way that makes sense to you. So you might organize things by the name of the person in the photo. Maybe you've got a different folder for each person in the family or something like that. Or maybe you've got a lot of your family in your archive and you want to kind of narrow down different sections of your family. You can create folders for them. So that's how you kind of get started with uploading and organizing material on Permanent. As I said before, metadata is really important too. And so the way that you can start adding metadata is you can click on any of the files that you've uploaded. You can see now that we've got a couple new buttons up here. You can delete, copy, move, things like that to keep organizing your materials. You've also got a couple of new buttons like share, publish, and download. So no matter what you upload to Permanent, you're always able to download the original file. And so that's what this download button is. You can also download it in a couple of other different formats, depending on what you've uploaded in the first place. You can also share material with people. So I'll go ahead and click on that. A share is basically a way for somebody else to see from their archive into your archive. So you can share individual files and folders to give access to other Permanent members, just that file or folder that you've shared. So you can see that this has been shared with another archive here, and that a role has been set here. And so a role basically gives whoever you've shared it with permission to add metadata or edit the photo or things like that. If you decide that you do want to publish something, you can always click the publish button instead of uploading it directly to your public workspace. What this does is it creates a copy of that file in your public workspace and adds it to your public archive so that it's publicly available for anybody to view. But we wanted to look at some metadata. And so once you've clicked this file, if you go over here to the info tab, you can see a preview of the file, and you can also see all of the metadata fields that we have. So we have a name field, which is generally starts off as whatever the name of the file is, but you can edit that. You can add a description, and as you can see here, you can add pretty much as long of a description as you want. So if you've got a particularly long story to accompany a photo or something like that, you'll be able to add that there. We also have alt text. This is a new metadata field that we've added that allows people who are using screen readers to be able to get an idea of what you've uploaded to your archive. And so this starts out as the name of the file that you've uploaded, but it's always good practice to go back and redo that alt text to kind of describe what's being captured in the photo or the file that you've uploaded. You can also add tags, which are kind of free and open for you to decide how you want to kind of do tags in your archive in particular. I generally like to add like people's names or locations and things like that so that I can use that to search across my archive later. If you've added a tag to multiple files in your archive, you can actually search by that tag and pull up all of the files that have been tagged space, for instance. We also have custom metadata, and this is a little bit of an advanced feature, but basically there are a lot of different metadata standards out there, and we wanted to make sure that if there's a particular metadata field that we haven't included in Permanent, that you're able to add it yourself. And so you can see here that I've added things like image credits, the medium, and then subjects. And so if you're the kind of person who wants to use metadata standards, or maybe you want to kind of come up with your own. I've also seen people kind of put in the field itself, name the field like person, and then put the person's name, or like location and put a location name. It's really flexible, and you're able to kind of put whatever you want there. There's also a date field that you can change and a location field that you can add if you feel comfortable. At the very bottom of the metadata list is some basic metadata that you can't change, things like the uploaded date, the size of the file, and what the original and the permanent formats are. And so like I was saying earlier, we do some conversions in the background depending on what you've uploaded to make sure that these files are preserved long-term. So you can kind of get a glimpse of what we're doing in the background here by looking at the original and the permanent format. I also wanted to mention that if you double click on a file, you can open it and see the full screen view with some zooming features. And you can also see all the metadata here and be able to edit it. So that's a great way, especially if you've got photos or maybe letters or things like that, that you're trying to capture the metadata of. Using the full screen view is definitely a helpful tool for you to use. Also here over here in the left side, where you see all of the archive information, you've got a link to the public gallery, which is what we saw earlier, where we saw one of the other permanent members' public archives. So you can take a look there. And then I also wanted to mention the app Files Workspace. So I'm going to click on it. This is where you can start the integration with Family Search if that's of interest to you. You can sign in with Family Search, and then you can select the people that you want to import as archives and start that process. The last workspace that I haven't touched on yet is the shared files workspace. So if you do decide to share something with another archive, or if they share with you rather, you'll see that shared material here in the shares workspace. There's also a couple more things. If you click this arrow next to your archive name and drop that down, you've got a couple more menu options. The first one is an archive profile, where you can start to fill out information about the archive, so you can really kind of start telling the story of family or the individual that you are creating this archive for. We also have archive members, and so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. An archive member is somebody who has access to your archive either to just view it or as a collaborator. And so this is where you manage your archive members here. So you've got a list of all of the archive members you currently have where you can edit or remove them. You can also add a member by clicking add member and then putting in their email address. And if they don't already have a permanent account, we send them an email to invite them to join permanent in your archive. So that's where you can kind of manage who has access to your archives and be able to collaborate. And so that's kind of a basic overview of what permanent looks like and the different workspaces that we have, so you can kind of get started uploading and playing around if you want. I'm going to go back to my slideshow and just talk a little bit about next steps if you do want to try out permanent.org. So if you decide that permanent might be a good fit for preserving your family legacy, you can create a free account and create your first archive. We'll send you an email after you have registered for permanent where you can redeem a code for your free gigabyte of storage. And then I challenge you that if you've got some family history documents on your computer, take the 5 most important ones, or the 5 that really you think capture maybe a particular story in your family's history, and try uploading those to permanent and adding metadata and see what it's like to kind of use permanent. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there and see if we have any questions.
So we got a couple of questions about some file types, and people are wondering if JCOM files, like files from Ancestry or maybe Family Tree Maker, if those could be uploaded so that people could see your information in the tree format.
Yeah, so currently, if you have any sort of family tree file, we can preserve that, but right now you would have to download the file from permanent to be able to see it. We don't have the capabilities to view it directly in permanent.org at the moment, but we're always kind of working to improve. And so that's one of the things that is on kind of our list of things that we would like to do in the future.
People are wondering if there's like a 2-factor authorization for signing in, or do you guys keep a backup copy of the files?
Yeah, so we do have 2-factor authentication on permanent. It's something that is a little bit new to permanent, and so we're in the process of adding it. If you sign up as a new member, you might not have 2-factor authentication set up automatically for you, but you can always reach out to us at support@permanent.org. And I'll go ahead and just leave this up so that you've got the URL and the email address. And we can help you get that set up in the meantime while we work on making sure that it's set up for people in the future. And then the other part of the question was backup copies, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So we, as a digital preservation system, it's really important to us that we use kind of a variety of different means to make sure that your files are preserved. So whenever you upload any file to permanent, we save it in 2 different cloud storage providers. And so if anything ever happens to one of the copies, or if one of those cloud storage providers isn't a good fit anymore for permanent, we can always migrate those to a different cloud storage provider, or use one of the 2nd or 3rd backup copies that we have to make sure that the file is still viewable and accessible.
Sounds good. If you upload a video to permanent, are you able to watch the video or listen to the audio on the platform, or would the file need to be downloaded before you can play it?
Yeah, so for most of your average kind of videos and audio, you'll be able to view those directly in permanent or listen to them directly in permanent. Since we do a lot of file conversions, they may not be immediately accessible for viewing because they go through some processing and all of the file transformations that we do to preserve it. But within a certain amount of time, it's available for you to watch and listen to.
Somebody is wondering about plans for integration with other genealogy-related programs, in addition to Family Search. And along with that, there was a question about if you are using Ancestry and you download a record, can you then go and upload that record directly to permanent?
So we don't currently have any other integrations with any of the other like family tree services or genealogy services. But, we're always kind of, like I said, looking to improve. And so as we, grow as an organization, there could be possibility that we're able to partner with places like Ancestry in the future. And then in terms of being able to download and then upload to permanent, I'd say that that's probably fine. There are certain limitations that we have. If you upload something that you don't own the copyright to, and you make it publicly available, there's always the chance that, we might get contacted to take it down. So it depends on what files you're uploading. But generally speaking, also, if it's in the private workspace and only you have access to it or the people that you've given access to, there's no kind of concern about that being an issue. So you can basically upload pretty much anything, any type of file that you want to permanent. And then given whether or not you have the copyright for it, you can publish it as well.
I know you mentioned there's a one-time storage fee of $10 per gigabyte. So if you would like additional storage, would it be $10 for another gigabyte, or how does that work?
Yeah, so as you kind of get started on permanent, you can purchase as much storage as you need. So depending on how much materials you want to upload to permanent, you can do that in $10 1 gigabyte increments. So say you've got 3 gigabytes of photos that you want to upload, you can purchase 3 gigabytes or $30 worth of storage, and then you'd be able to upload that material and it's preserved indefinitely. You can always do it kind of as you need it. A lot of our members will kind of purchase a little bit at a time as they work through their material, and as they run out, they purchase more.
We have a couple people wondering about searching for the materials in Google. So if you have your archive set to public and you have your material tagged and the metadata set up, will that when you search for that, does it pull up in Google?
That's a really good question, and something that we're kind of trying to optimize as well. It can pull up in Google, but Google kind of has their own way of ordering things and pulling information from websites. And so we're doing the best we can to reveal any public information, anything in that public archive that you have made available to the internet. We are working to try to make that available to search engines, so that if you Google somebody's name or something like that, that a permanent archive could pull up. That's still a little bit of a work in progress though. And Google's always kind of changing the way they do things. So I think the answer is yes, it's possible, but it may not come up as like the first search result or something like that, depending on what other things are out there on the internet.
Somebody else is asking, if I share files in a private folder with someone as a viewer, will they then be able to download that file to their computer?
Yes. So if anybody has access to your archive, they can download any records that are within it. You can also, in your public workspace, for your public archive, you can enable people to download material from your public archive, but you can also turn that off if you'd rather make it a little bit more difficult for people to have to, try to get that information. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable publishing their material and not making it, able to be downloaded.
Somebody else is asking, if I upload an image as a TIFF file, will it be preserved as a high quality image file, or will it be preserved as a JPEG? How will that be saved?
We always save the original file that you upload. So if you've uploaded a high resolution TIFF, that's always going to be available for you to download, and will be preserved long-term in our system. We do transform or migrate some files to things like JPEG to make it a little bit easier to see in the browser and load a little bit more quickly. So there may be a version of your file that is saved as a JPEG that you can see on, directly on permanent, but the TIFF will always be preserved.
If an image is downloaded from permanent, does the metadata stay with it, or is there a way to export the metadata for the materials in your archive?
That's a really good question. We're in the process of trying to make at least image files downloadable with metadata. That's something that's on our roadmap and that we've been slowly working on. We're we're a team of 8 people. And so, you know, sometimes development is a little bit slow, but that is something that we want to offer in the future, both being able to download your metadata embedded in the file and also be able to kind of do a mass download of your metadata from your archive.
And then regarding storage, is there a limit in storage capacity? Does it cap at 100 gigabytes? Somebody's wondering.
There's no limit at all. Yeah, you can
Okay.
you can upload as much as you want as you've paid for the storage. So
Somebody is wondering if you will be at Roots Tech next week.
we will not physically be at Roots Tech, but we are taking part in their virtual programs. So we'll have, I think, a virtual booth, and we'll kind of be posting and stuff like that around Roots Tech.
Somebody is wondering about site maintenance and if there's certain times where might not be able to access their archives, or kind of how that works.
We do a little bit of site maintenance every week, but it should be minimal interruption to your experience on Permanent. And if anything ever happens and the site goes down, we generally post on social media and try to get it back up as soon as possible. So there should be pretty minimal anything stopping you from getting to Permanent.
I just wanted to mention again, if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to send us an email at genealogy@acpl.info. And if you would like a copy of the chat from today's program, you're welcome to send us an email for that, and we'll get that to you as well. And thank you very much, Kaitlyn, for presenting. We got lots of good questions and lots of good comments in the chat, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for
you.
inviting me.
And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good day.